The other thing we heard from President Trump's Twitter account is that it is time to move forward in working constructively with Russia. So we'll talk a few minutes about all of this. The Weekly Standard senior writer Mike Warren is with us. Former Bush 43 spokesperson Mercedes Schlapp joins us as well as Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins on this whole idea. Mike Warren, let me go to you on this first. And whether you want to bring the Don Jr. story into this or not, I'm not sure. But this whole idea of moving on from Russian meddling in the election, your take?
Well, look, the intelligence agencies in the United States say that that's exactly what Russia did. And Vladimir Putin apparently didn't admit it in these meetings, and the president didn't push him on it. I think it's important to know, not just because of what happened in the 2016 election, but also what could happen in future elections. Is Russia going to try this again? And I think without any sort of significant pushback, it's very likely that they will.
Now, the White House argues, and I saw Reince Priebus doing it yesterday, that there was some pushback from the president, I should say, on that in that meeting. But we weren't in there. Rex Tillerson was, and you get the number of different stories, Mercedes, about it. But the idea that we can even work, theoretically, that we can work constructively with Russia, is that even fair?
Well, I think you can work somewhat constructively with Russia on the issues of, for example, Syria, where they obviously came to a ceasefire agreement this past week. But I think that when it comes to the issue of the hacking or the cybersecurity, that's where I don't see you're going to find that common ground with Russia. As we saw, the president had to step back from his comments on the cybersecurity unit that he said he could create with Russia.
Right.
Obviously, I think that we have to make it very clear that Russia is our enemy. They don't have the United States in their best interest. And in essence, we have to come down to the President Trump criticized Obama on the fact that he did so little on handling the Russians and their meddling in the election, and that he stayed pretty quiet about it. That I think for Donald Trump, he would be in a position of power, a position of strength, if he's able to say, look, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again in U.S. elections.
Right. And now, Michael Starr Hopkins, on the point about the Don Jr. story, which is what Blake brought up at the end of his report, to what, I've heard both sides of it all morning long. Some people say, well, no big deal. You're working on a campaign. Someone's got opposition research. Of course, you're going to listen to it. And on the other side, they're saying, well, it was what we've been talking about all along, that there's some sort of working together between the Russians and Trump. How significant is this in your view?
This is insanely significant. Let's think about this in a non-political way. What we have is the son of a presidential nominee going and meeting with a foreign adversary in an attempt to gain information that could potentially be incriminating to use against another American. That's something that would cause Ronald Reagan to be turning over in his grave.
So it's not just average opposition research, is Michael's point. So Mercedes, let me say, insanely significant. Is that an overreach? What's your view on it?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, Michael makes that point about meeting with a foreign agent, but clearly on the Democratic side, there was a Ukrainian American who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee, meeting at the Ukrainian embassy to disseminate negative information on Trump. We don't want to see foreign agents.
That's a complete distraction.
How is that a distraction?
Let's look at what we have here.
We're talking about the fact that foreign agents having these conversations.
Well, Michael, one second. Let her just finish one thing.
Well, what I'm saying is that let's just put it all out there, which is, I don't like the fact that there are foreign agents talking to campaign officials in whether it be Democrat or Republican, but we got to lay it out there. If it's the Russians, if it's the Ukrainians, and they have this sort of opposition research. Look, my inclination would have been never to have had that meeting.
Yeah,
I don't think it brings anything there when you're dealing with foreign agents that have opposition research. Well, it puts you in a very difficult position.
Let me ask Mike Warren about this. I mean, I feel like we've asked this question a number of times. Anytime these stories comes up, which is the larger point here to some extent, is what effect does this have on the agenda, on getting the conversation going with only a 3-week congressional session now on health care and moving on to taxes? What's the effect, or what has been the effect on the agenda of all this?
Well, it hurts the administration, and it gives more fuel to the Mueller investigation. Look, I mean, you've got to think of this from a position of law enforcement. You've got, in this particular story, Don Jr. saying he never met with any Russian Russian nationals as part of the campaign. He told the New York Times that in March. Then he says on Saturday, well, we did meet with Jared Kushner and the campaign manager, Paul Manafort, but we just talked about adoptions. Then, when provided with more information, the next day he provides a fuller statement. I think that indicates a couple of things, and the biggest thing is that clearly the FBI is investigating this, or somebody in the Mueller investigation is looking into this, has information, and is interested in this meeting. And the fact that the president's son took basically 3 times before he was able to sort of give a more full picture, I think is a troubling part of the administration's story with this Russian investigation.
The idea that he was changing his story, right.
I'd like to add one quick fact on that.
Go ahead.
72 hours after this meeting, WikiLeaks dumped the majority of their Hillary Clinton negative information into the internet. And so I think it's very interesting to see that not only did Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and Don Jr. Have that meeting, Donald Trump was in Trump Towers, and 72 hours later,
so
we don't know that
information.
I understand that, but there's no way to necessarily connect those two.
Exactly.
We don't know. But go ahead,
Mercedes. It's like conspiracy theory number 300,000 by the Democrats. It's like you're making this jump going
from
the WikiLeaks.
How are we making jumps? You're saying that everyone in the campaign is in the Trump Towers while a Russian agent is there.
To Jared Kushner, he did disclose that meeting with this Russian lawyer, and I think that I do believe on the part of Donald Trump Jr. he should have had the opportunity to just come out with the story, and this is where you see where the special counsel will have to investigate and make a decision on what.
But even Jared,
meant.
Right, Mercedes, to be fair, took a while. I mean,
listen, I'm a criminal defense attorney.
I would say several days after. It was so it wasn't the first day. It was probably that second or third day that they ended up disclosing.
And removing the collusion.
It's very amateur.
Yeah, right. It can. It's like Mike and I were talking about a second. It could hurt your agenda if that's the way you're right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's fair, no matter what your point of view is.
I think that there is no question that every day that we keep talking about this Russian meeting or that Russian meeting, it takes away from the fact of these very critical agenda items like the health care reform.
Speaking of which, where are you guys on that? That's what we were talking about before. Mike, you first, and then we'll go down the line real quick. I mean, do we get health care? Do we get taxes? I think that's most important for our viewers. Tax cuts, tax reform by the end of the year, Mike Warren.
I think it's difficult to see how tax reform gets done, certainly on the original timeline, which I think was by the end of August. Nobody in Washington believes that's going to be the case.
You think?
At the end of the year, possibly. I mean, it all depends on what will it actually look like. I mean, you had the discussion about health care. Will it actually be the sort of idea of repealing and replacing,
or just
will it sort of be a half measure?
Mercedes?
And I think that, I think that's true.
Two quick things. One is for tax reform. I could see it happening, finishing in the fall. I think you're seeing a lot more common ground when it comes to tax reform, except on the issue of the Border Adjustment Act part of the bill.
Yes.
I think when it comes to health care, it's going to be a very tough call, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see if Mitch McConnell moves in the direction of accepting Senator Cassidy's alternative, which actually has more of the moderate Republicans, maybe can pull some Democrats into that vote, but that would be like a small Band-Aid on a very big wound.
And from the Democrats' point of view, Mike, I don't know what the Democrats are rooting for, just politically, in all of this, and what gives them more of an advantage going into the midterms, if you don't get something done, or if you do, if you're the Republicans.
We want to get something done so we can stabilize the markets, but we're not going to allow a full repeal. As long as President Trump keeps tweeting and drawing attention to the dots, the Democrats are going to keep connecting them. And I think that these are self-inflicted wounds by the president, not the Democrats.
No tweets about the Don Jr. story, I noticed, but everything else this morning. And thanks, guys. We appreciate it, all three of you.